Rishi Sunak has completely failed in what he set out to do in 2023. A year ago, the Prime Minister outlined his top 5 priorities for the year and asked that we hold him to account directly for whether it's delivered. So his report card is now in, and we can say it's an unambiguous fail. Let's look at the evidence on each of his 5 priorities. On halving inflation, the target that the Prime Minister set has been met. This shows the annual rate of UK inflation. It's clear that inflation has fallen dramatically since it peaked in October 22. In the past year, it's fallen from 10.7% to 3.9%. If inflation had halved, it would have been 5.35%. So it's a fact that inflation has more than halved since Sunak made that pledge. So the government is claiming that this is a big victory. They tweeted that we halved inflation. There's just one problem here. Note that they say we halved inflation. Although the target has been achieved, this was a completely meaningless target. Nobody blames the government for the massive increase in inflation during 21 and 22. Everybody knows that this was primarily due to energy price shocks as a result of the Russian invasion of Ukraine and global supply shocks associated with COVID lockdowns. As the impact of these shocks has been reversed, why would the government try to take credit for the fall in inflation? This is cheap and misleading politics. When Sunak made this pledge, he knew that inflation would definitely fall in 2023. Absent a further economic shock, it was a statistical certainty due to the way that inflation is calculated. The truth is that the government has done absolutely nothing that would have brought about any type of reduction in inflation. The Bank of England, which is independent of the government, has raised interest rates which will reduce inflation, but only in the longer term. The bulk of the reduction in inflation has actually come about because energy prices have started falling again. We can see this in the graph of energy prices. This is actual prices, not the rate of inflation, which is the change in prices. Expressed as an index with February 2019 set at 100, we can see that by March 23, energy prices had increased by 125%, i.e. more than doubled. This is the primary cause of the inflation that we've experienced in recent years. Since the summer, energy prices have fallen by 22%. They're still high compared to 2019, but they have come down, and this has had a significant reducing effect on inflation. The blue line in this chart shows the price index for all items. Of course, we see from this chart that the reduction in inflation does not mean falling prices. It just means they're increasing at a slower rate. Although annual inflation has come down to 3.9% in November 2023, this means that prices still increased by 3.9%. If there was to be another energy price shock, the rate of inflation would increase again. For example, if conflict in the Middle East worsens. But guess what? The government won't be taking credit then, of course. So inflation has been halved. That's a fact. So we can give a tick as this being met. But I put the red brackets because the government can take no credit for this, and it's just dishonest of the government to claim any credit. In relation to the economy growing pledge, this chart shows an index of UK GDP with 2019 equal to 100. We can see that for the past year, growth has basically been flat. In the tweet that we saw earlier, the government absolutely cannot say that there has been any growth in the economy. So instead, they say that they took difficult decisions to grow our economy. In effect, they watered down the pledge and somehow claimed it was part of the big year for Britain. Totally dishonest and total fail. On the debt falling target, the normal measure is public debt as a percentage of GDP. We can see that over the past year, it has not fallen. In fact, it has even increased slightly. Again, clear fail. This didn't stop the Prime Minister stating that debt is falling back in November. And in Prime Minister's questions, he also said, We have indeed reduced the debt. Absolute lies. The evidence is clear, but the lies were confirmed by the UK Statistics Authority, an independent watchdog. The chair of the authority pointed out that the fall in debt as a proportion of GDP is only forecast to decrease in 5 years, in 2028 to 29. The Prime Minister's office claimed that this was the basis of the claim that debt is falling. He's more cautious in the language that he uses than me. For me, I'm calling them out. Liars. However, he does say that there is confusion and that the PM may be undermining trust in the government's use of statistics. Crystal clear. The government lied. Debt has not fallen, it's increased. Clear fail. Next, to cutting NHS waiting lists. The latest stats actually show that the waiting list has increased by 500,000 people over the past year. Sunak is blaming the doctors' strike for not achieving this target. The waiting list has in fact increased dramatically under this government for more than a decade. The doctors' strike only started in March 2023. Plus, I totally support the doctors' strike. Their pay claim of 35% may sound ridiculous, but as I show in a previous video, this is totally justified so that their real pay can be restored to what they were paid in 2008. The government has refused to negotiate, and therefore I would hold the government responsible for the effect of the doctors' strike on the waiting list. For me, it's a clear fail in relation to cutting waiting lists. On small boats, this chart shows the number of migrants arriving in the UK by small boat. There was a significant reduction in 2023. However, the number of migrants in small boats was still higher than in 2021. The bad weather recently has meant that there haven't been any crossings. There are some predictions that as soon as the weather improves, there's likely to be a big increase again. In any case, although the number of migrants coming in small boats has fallen, it's still very high. I don't think the government can in any way claim that it's stopped the boats. This is a complex issue and I'm going to do a separate video on immigration statistics. However, given the second highest level of small boat migrants on record, I think we can say that the small boats pledge is a fail. In conclusion, therefore, the government's announcement that 2023 was a big year for Britain is just dishonest and an outright lie. Rishi told us to hold him to account on these 5 pledges. The facts show that it's a complete fail. This government is an absolute disaster. Meanwhile, massive poverty, inequality and a crumbling infrastructure all continue, and there's no pledge at all on any of these issues. Embarrassing and a disgrace. I hope you found this information useful. If you did, please consider liking and subscribing. Thanks for watching and I'll see you next time.